Since professional athletes need to perform a range of technical maneuvers in front of their screaming fans, it goes without saying that things can get a little tough for them. In fact, there's nothing more embarrassing than failing at something while the rest of the world watches. But what are some of the most inappropriate and humiliating moments in the sporting world? And what made them so memorable? For all this and more, stay tuned. Number 1. The unimpressed face of MCKAYLA Maroney. First up on our list is a moment that became infamous back in 2012 during the London Olympic Games. But to really understand why it went down in history, we have to go back to the career of U.S. gymnast MCKAYLA Maroney the year before. You see, Maroney was the favorite to take home the gold in the women's vault competition, something that became obvious because of her incredible performances carrying through to the games. But when the finals came around, the pressure appeared to be a bit too much for the young gymnast. You would have never said so by taking a look at her first vault, which was honestly done with perfection and grace, scoring her high and allowing the iconic vaulter to grab on to the first position with ease. The same couldn't be said for her second vault though, which saw her underextending and landing in a sitting position right in front of the judges. Unfortunately for Maroney, this embarrassing moment caused her to say goodbye to the gold. She was, however, able to achieve silver, but the unimpressed look on her face whilst on the podium said it all. Funnily enough, it's this inappropriate face of hers which actually led to her becoming more famous than the other athletes competing at the time. Even now, the unenthusiastic face of MCKAYLA Maroney is used by people who don't even know who she is. Suffice to say, the moment has become a meme that just keeps on giving. Number 2. The Russian faceplant that was heard across the world. This was far from the only embarrassing gymnastics moment connected to the 2012 London Games, though. Another was experienced by one of the greatest gymnasts of all time, Nastia Liukin, who was born in Russia but later snatched by the United States to compete at the Beijing Olympics a few years before. And as it turns out, this was a great decision by the Americans, with Liukin quickly becoming the best thing since sliced bread and walking away with the title of all-around champion at the Games. But when it came time to qualify for London, things didn't quite go the way they were supposed to. Although she was a favorite to win gold on behalf of the United States once more, Liukin found herself between a rock and a hard place. Having had a terrible season with only one more chance to qualify, she dusted off her hands and stepped up to the plate, grabbing onto the uneven bars and preparing for a historic performance. And things seemed to be going well for quite some time, with the commentators speaking up about her intricate movements. But then something catastrophic happened. While trying to land a simple transition, Liukin overextended her leap, leaving her flailing about and face planting on the mat below her. To make matters worse, the world watched as she gave a little reflexive kick upon landing, showing that she was physically fine, but definitely not in the best place mentally. And just like that, she was out. Number 3. Legs aren't supposed to bend that way. Next up, we have the snap that defined the 2016 Rio Olympic Games, and is still considered to be one of the most gruesome injuries ever experienced in the history of televised gymnastics. We are, of course, referring to the injury of French gymnast Samir Ait Said, who, like MCKAYLA Maroney, was considered to be one of the best vaulters in the industry. Suffice to say, all eyes were on him to take home the gold for his motherland in Rio. In fact, up to that point, he had received more accumulated points than anyone else when it came to vaulting, making him a shoo-in to win the event. The pressure appeared to be a bit too much for the famous athlete, though. Rather than sticking to a moveset that he had down, he decided to try something out of his wheelhouse. And this is where things began to fall apart. Rather than landing as perfectly as he had before, Said's leg was connected to the ground at an awkward angle, causing a snap to be heard across the stadium. The audience watched in horror as his leg began to dangle just below the knee, showing that something was seriously wrong with the man. As embarrassing as this fall was for the golden boy of vault, he kept his composure and waited for the emergency staff to arrive without causing much of a scene. And despite his failure, he received a standing ovation for his attempt. Number 4. When DOMINIKA CIBULKOVA was cited for indecency. The next moment on our list is a lot less disgusting, though, and actually shows how the double standards of tennis are still rife within the competition. As it turns out, it's a lot easier for a woman to be cited for indecency on the court than a man, something that professional hitter DOMINIKA discovered for herself when she was fined for lifting up her shirt while sitting on the sidelines during a break from her match. Remember, tennis is considered to be a sport of dignity and grace. Just take a look at the pretentious behavior still seen at Wimbledon, and you'll know what we mean. And while male players like Djokovic and Murray have changed shirts while on the court time and time again, it looks like women aren't afforded the same opportunity. We know this because of the awkward moment that took place between CIBULKOVA and an umpire a few years ago. Essentially, the professional tennis player went on to remove her dirty shirt so it could be replaced by a clean one. But in a few seconds, she was being forced to put the shirt back on by the umpire, who stated that her behavior was undignified, amongst other things. And it's not like she was naked or anything. She was wearing a very conservative sports bra underneath her shirt. Either way, her face lit up like a bright red Christmas light, causing more shame than was necessary. Number 5. Sir, is that your mother? It's not just the professionals who go viral because of embarrassing sporting moments, though. This is made abundantly clear by the next inappropriate and humiliating moment on our list, which actually featured on the amateur mixed martial arts circuit. Before we jump right into it, though, it's important to know that when it comes to combat sports, a contestant's bark needs to be just as impressive as his bite. In other words, an embarrassing moment could pretty much end a fighter's career early, and that's exactly what happened in the bout between Caleb Frasher and Joe Fisher in the OFC 20 March Massacre a few years back. After Fisher had been put to sleep with a rear naked choke, his mother took things into her own hands and scaled the cage of the octagon in an attempt to check on her son. When she realized that he was all right, she started to shout and point fingers at referee Mark Matheny, claiming that she was going to beat him to a pulp. Suffice to say, Fisher lost twice that evening, with the fighter becoming the laughingstock of mixed martial arts because of the embarrassment caused by his mother. Worse yet, she actually had to be escorted out of the octagon by police. Talk about inappropriate behavior. Number 6. The lapse of judgment that ruined Keegan McHenry. Last but not least, we have an embarrassing ice hockey moment that involved Keegan McHenry of Utah State University losing the plot completely. And for those of you who haven't heard of his incredible lapse of judgment, join us as we go back to 2014, which saw his team facing off against the Denver University Pioneers in a game stacked with rivalry. With just 15 seconds remaining in overtime and the puck on the verge of going into Denver's goal, clinching the win for Utah, McHenry thought it would be a good idea to head over to his fans and sign some autographs. He was Utah's goalkeeper after all, so he wasn't exactly involved in any of the action on the other side of the rink. That being said, the hockey gods appeared to be against him that day. As fate would have it, Denver won the defensive zone faceoff, slapping the puck reflexively in the direction of the Utah goal. An easy save for McHenry, or at least it would have been if the keeper was standing in his box. As the crowd shouted for McHenry to rush over, he tried his best, but fell short of the puck as it went sliding into the goal. Just like that, Denver had beaten their longtime rivals, all because McHenry thought it would be fun to sign some autographs during the game. And there you have it, some of the most embarrassing and inappropriate sporting failures in the history of the world. Which moment is your favorite? And do you know of any others that we missed out on? Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below.